6.5, we're going to look at buying, renting, and leasing. And there's a lot of writing to do on the first page. I apologize. So buying, as you know, is when you purchase something with savings, or for some bigger items, you might take out a loan, and with that loan, often there's a down payment you make, right? An initial amount you pay, and then the rest you put on a loan, and you pay off over time. Okay, when you buy something, the GST is calculated on the purchasing price, right? So if you're buying some piece of furniture for $2,000 and you're going to pay it outright, or you're going to take a loan out on it, you're going to pay your 5% GST on that $2,000, and it's figured out immediately when you purchase it. You'll see later with leasing that's not exactly the way it works. So there's some good things about buying, obviously. One is that you actually own the vehicle, the property, whatever it is that you've bought. You owe it yourself. Once the loan is paid, sometimes it takes years to pay off the loan, but once you pay off the loan, it's yours. It's more economical if you stick with the same car or property. Now, if you're the sort of person who wants a new car every year, every 2 years, or new house, you like moving around or whatever, then buying is actually not the best option, probably. We'll see how renting or leasing could be a better option for you. And you can do what you want to your car or your property, right? If you buy the car, you can put fancy flames down the side of the car. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? And you can put nice mag wheels or whatever you want. You can do everything you want. But if you're renting or leasing, that's not something that you can do. You have to keep it in the same condition. Okay, bad things about buying. You get a higher down payment and monthly payments. So, every month you got to pay a little bit more, and you got to often put more down right up front than you would if you were leasing. It can be a hassle to sell or trade in the car, right? So let's say you are the sort of person who likes getting a new car every 3 or 4 years. Well, it's kind of a hassle to have to sell your car or trade in your car. You got to post it, you got to have people come and try it out, and you got to haggle with them. It's a drag. But that's something you got to do if you're going to buy and sell a car. And you're responsible for the repairs or the upkeep. If there's something wrong with the house that you bought, you got to deal with it. You got to pay for it. If your car gets the motor breaks down, it's your car. You got to deal with it. You got to pay for it. Okay, so that's buying. Let's move on to renting, which you're also probably pretty familiar with. With renting, there's a payment made for the temporary use of a good, service, or property. So property, you understand, that could be like renting a ski chalet for the weekend in Whistler. You don't own it, but you're going to rent it for the weekend. A service, that could be something like, I don't know, maybe rent a bartender to help out at your wedding or something like that. So that's a service that's you're renting. And a good, maybe you rent some kind of equipment to work in your garden. You need some kind of rototiller. Is that an actual thing, a rototiller? It just popped into my head. Anyway, you could rent some equipment or something. So the good thing about renting is you only pay when you actually need or use it, right? There's no point in getting your rototiller. I hope there is such a thing. But there's no point in buying a rototiller if you use it 1 day per year. Why not rent it for a much cheaper cost, and then you're only paying once per year rather than effectively paying on and on and on with a loan or something like that. You get lower rates when you're renting, obviously, than buying it. You're going to pay less if you rent, and you don't need to worry about maintenance. If you were to rent that property up in Whistler I was talking about, and then while you're there, there's some problem with the dishwasher. If you didn't cause the problem, if it just went on the fritz, you don't have to pay for it. The owner's going to have to pay for it. Bad things about renting? Well, you don't own. There's something to be said about actually owning it. You don't own that place in Whistler. You can't go up there whenever you want, for example. It's inconvenient. So whenever you rent, you have to fill out paperwork. You got to go figure out if the vehicle you want is available, or the Whistler property you want is available. You got to get everything signed. You got to get the money. It's inconvenient. So there you go. Now leasing, the last one. Leasing is something you might not be so familiar with, and what that is, it's a contractual agreement where the user, also called the leasee, agrees to pay the owner, the leaser, for use of an asset, like a property or a vehicle. So this happens a lot with cars. People decide they don't want to rent because they drive a car a lot. They don't want to buy either. So what they're going to do is they're going to pay the owner, the dealership or whatever, for the car, but you don't actually own it. It's still the car dealership's car. So GST is calculated in this case on the monthly payment of the lease. So it's not on the total purchase price, it's on the monthly payment. We'll take a look at this in the next page. And the GST is also calculated on the deposit, if there is any, and then divided by the number of payments in the lease, and this is added to the monthly payment. Again, we'll do this in the next page, you'll see. Why would you lease? What are the advantages of leasing? Well, one thing is there's lower monthly payments. You don't have to pay as much each month. You can drive a better car for less money. So there's a lot of people who lease. A lot of people you see driving fancy cars in Vancouver. Yeah, there's a lot of really wealthy people in Vancouver, but there's also a lot of people who lease their cars, and so they're kind of driving fancier cars than they could afford to buy, but they can lease the car. You get a lower down payment when you lease often, and there's lower repair costs. Oftentimes there's some kind of agreement when you're leasing that the repair costs will be picked up by the dealership or whatever. Okay, so why don't we all lease? It sounds like a great thing to do, right? Drive fancy car, don't pay as much, etc., etc. Well, one thing is you don't own when the lease agreement ends. So once your lease is finished, that's it. You're done. You don't own the car. You have to give it back. Or if you want, you can buy it out at that time at a lower price. But what you can't do is hold on to the car for no more money, and what you can't do is sell the car to get more money. So you've paid all that money out, and then at the end of the lease, what you really have is nothing except the opportunity to buy it at a lower price. So that's the big disadvantage. But remember, if you're the sort of person that likes driving new cars every couple of years or whatever, who cares? You would have gotten a new car anyway, so who cares if your lease ran out and then you just get a new lease? Oftentimes there's only limited mileage when you have a lease, so it'll say, this year you can only drive 20,000 kilometers, and if you go over 20,000 kilometers, you have to start paying for every kilometer you drive, so that can get pretty expensive. And it actually turns out that leasing is usually a more expensive option than buying, and of course more expensive than renting. I know here it says lower down payment and lower monthly payments, but when you add up all the monthly payments that you make over the whole lease, you usually end up spending more. Okay, last thing is residual value. So the residual value is the price at which an item is expected to be sold at the end of its lease, or the amount remaining on the depreciated value. So in other words, once your lease runs out, and then it says, I said up here about the buyout option, however much that buyout option is for, like, okay, now that the lease is run out, you can buy the car outright for $10,000. Well, then 10,000 would be the residual value. Another name for it is the lease end value, how much the car is worth at the end of the lease, more or less. Okay, so we're going to do one question actually, and there's one thing I just want to write in here. It has to do with when you're filling in your TMV solver, and the last line of the TMV solver says payment, and then it says end begin or something like that. Well, when you're buying a car, the payment is always going to be at the end of the month. But when you're leasing a car, the payment's always going to be at the beginning of the month. And there's one other thing. With leasing, the FV, the future value, when we were taking out a loan, when we bought by taking out a loan, the future value was going to be zero, right? We wanted to pay it off completely. But remember, with a lease, you don't pay it off completely. So how much the future value is going to be is the residual value, what we were just talking about down here. So the future value is how much the car's buyout amount is at the end of the lease. So with that in mind, let's try doing this one epic question. Basically, Amanda needs a vehicle for work on average 12 days each month. She only drives 12 days a month. And she's trying to figure out what's her best option. Should she rent a car 12 times a month? Should she just buy a car and then she'll always have it? Or should she lease a car? Okay, so we're going to go through the three different cases and see which one's the best option. So let's start with renting. It's the most basic way to the one to look at. So for renting, it costs $49.99 a day to rent the car, and there's also tax on that. And the nice thing about renting in this case, there's unlimited kilometers. That's not always the case. Sometimes when you rent, there is kilometer limits, but in this case with Amanda, unlimited kilometers. So all we have to do is figure out, first of all, how much would she pay per day? She'd pay $49.99 plus tax. Now, what we're going to do, since this is what your book does as well, is we're only going to look at the GST. I guess the book wanted to make it usable by all the different provinces, even though the different provinces have different PSTs, provincial sales tax. So in British Columbia, this provincial sales tax is 7%, right? At least at the time I'm making this video. So really, you should be paying 12% on this. But just so we're doing it similar to the book and you don't get confused, we're only going to consider GST, and GST is 5%. So we got to add on 5% to $49.99. So you could figure out what 5% is and then add it on to $49.99. That'll work. Or the other thing you can do is you can multiply this by 1.05. Does that make sense? The 0.05 is the 5%. The 1 is 100% because we want to keep the $49.99, 100% of that, plus 5% more. So hopefully that makes sense to you. If not, multiply $49.99 times 0.05 and then add that amount onto $49.99. I'm just saving us a bit of time here. So if I do that, I get $52.49, and that's how much she's paying per day. Now, she's using this car 12 times per month, so why don't we multiply that by 12? And if we do that, we get $629.87, and that's how much she's paying per month. I want to do one other thing here. I want to actually get the total cost over a length of 4 years. Why 4 years? Because if you look at these next two options, for buying, she's taking out a 4-year loan, and for leasing, it's a 4-year lease. So just so we can compare it to the buying and leasing, let's also figure out the total cost over 4 years. Well, that's not too hard. If this is how much she's paying per month, we're going to multiply that by the number of months in 4 years. In 4 years, there are 48 months. So I multiply that by 48, and if we do that, we get our final answer. I'm just going to write it over here. It is $30,233.95. That's actually a lot of money, isn't it? Just by renting, she's paying $30,000. Seems like that might be too much money to be spending when you could actually get an actual car for around that price. But let's keep going and see what happens here. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at buying. So the cost of the car that we're looking at is $32,800. That's before tax. And Amanda's going to make a $4,000 down payment, 4.5% interested compounded monthly, and it's a 4-year term. So the first thing we better deal with is the tax and the down payment. Remember, we said on the other page that with buying, like with a loan or just buying outright, you figure out tax on the purchase price. So we got to get the tax on this amount. So we're going to do the same sort of thing we did up here. We're going to take $32,800. We want to know how much it's going to be once you add on the GST. Again, we should really do PST as well, but just to make it like the book, we'll only do GST. So we're going to multiply by 1.05. And if you do that, you get $34,440. That's the total amount she needs to pay. Now she's going to start by paying $4,000 as down payment. So let's subtract 4,000. And if you do that, she's down to $30,440. So that's how much she has to take the loan out for, right? So let's go through here and figure this out. The present value is how much she's taking the loan out for. That's $30,440. The percentage is 4.5%. It is a 4-year term, and so the number of months is 4 times 12, or 48. The payment, that's what we're trying to figure out here. How much is she paying every single month? The future value, well, this is a loan now. We want to pay the thing off completely, so the future value is going to be 0. Payments per years, we're going to pay every month, so that's 12, and it's compounded monthly, so the compounding per year is also 12. Remember what we said? We said that when you're buying, the payments are always at the end. So here we go. We're going to put this in our TI-83. Okay, here we go. Second, finance, number one, and then we're going to put 48, 4.5, 30,440, 0, 0, 12, 12, keep it on the end. We want to know payment, so I go back into payments, alpha, enter, and I get $694.14. So, what the heck, I'll write that in here, $694.14. That's how much she's paying every month. Now I want to get the total cost. Well, every month she's paying $694.14, and she's doing this for how long? She's doing this for 48 months. So multiply that by 48, and if we do that, we get $33,318.72. Was there anything else she paid? Yeah, there was actually. There was that $4,000 down payment. So we got to add that on as well. And if we do that, we get our final answer for this option, which is $37,318.72. So if you compare that to the first one, the renting, you can see she's spending $7,000 more dollars, but she actually owns the car, right? So one of the things she could do at this point or some point in the future, she could sell the car and make some of that money back. So I don't know. I'm kind of thinking that the buying might be a better option. I suppose there's other things to consider, like repairs she's now going to be responsible for, insurance, more and probably pay more insurance. But you know, um, anyway, I can't give a definitive answer, but I think for myself, I'd probably consider buying. Okay, let's go on to leasing and see how that looks. So same price for the car, just like before, 30,800. Just like before, we're going to pay a down payment of 4,000. Interest rate's a little bit higher. That's what happens when you lease. You get a higher interest rate. Still a 4-year term, and the buyout option. So at the end of the lease, how much Amanda could buy the car for is $14,000. Okay, so now one of the things we have to do here is we have to we're not going to do the tax right away, right? Remember in this one up here, we immediately multiplied by 1.05. That was the total purchase price, and we figured out the tax on it. That's not what you do with leasing. We wrote this on the other side of the page. You do the tax on the payment. So we got to get the payment first before we figure out the tax. So once I have this amount, then we can start dealing with tax. So we can just go immediately to fill all this stuff in. It's a 4-year term, so our n is going to be 4 times 12. It's 5%, so 5. The previous value, or the present, sorry, the present value is 32,800. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's wrong, because remember, she owes 32,800, but she's making a $4,000 down payment, so her present value is 28,800. Okay, the future value, that's where the buyout option, 14,000. Remember, you're not paying it off completely, so it's not going to be 0, it's going to be 14,000. But be careful, it's going to be negative 14,000. All right, that would be money you would still owe, so negative 14,000. Payments per year, 12 payments, paid monthly, and it's compounded monthly, so that's also 12. Remember, with a lease, it's always going to be at the beginning that you make your payments. Okay, let's go change what we need to change here. The first one's okay, 48, but then we go to 5, 28,800. Can put whatever you want here or leave it the same. I'll put 0. Future value is negative, so I hit this button down here, 14,000, 12, 12, and beginning. Back up to the payment, and let's see, whoops, that's wrong, here we go. And I get $397.51. So let's write that in there. I mean, it actually says negative, but I'm just going to write $397.51 because that's actually the number we're going to use. Okay, so remember, we haven't dealt with tax yet, so let's deal with the tax. So on the monthly payment of $397.51, we have to add on tax. Again, we would consider GST and PST, but we're only going to do GST, so we're going to multiply that by 1.05. And if we do that, we get $417.39. So we have our $4,000. Now, we've already paid that. So you don't want to be multiplying by 1.05, or you'd end up paying the 4,000 again. So you only want to get the tax. So I'm going to multiply it by 0.05. And then what it says to do on the other side of the page is to divide that amount by how many months you're going to be paying monthly fees, so monthly payments. So 4 times 12 is 48, right? You got to divide it by 48 so that we divide that amount, the tax on the down payment, we divide it evenly over the 48 months. So 4,000 times 0.05 divided by 48, and if you do that, you get $4.17. So to get the total tax, we add those two together, and you get $421.56 is the total payment that we have to make every single month. We have to pay $421.56. Okay, we're ready to get the total cost of this truck or car, whatever it was that Amanda is renting. So every month she's paying $421.56, and she's doing that for 48 months. So we multiply those two together, and you get 20,234. Has she already paid anything else? Yeah, she already paid the down payment of 4,000. So we add that on, and you get 24,234. Now, that would be it, right? She could stop right there and only pay 24,234. That looks like definitely the best deal. But what's the one bad thing about this? If she stops here, what happens after 4 years? Then she doesn't have the car anymore. So I think it's preferable to renting probably. She's probably saved herself money. I'm not sure if I'd say it's preferable to buying though, because she now no longer has a car or a truck or whatever it was. What if she wants to buy the truck? What if she says, you know what, I'm really enjoying this truck. I'd like to purchase it outright now. Well, then she has to pay the buyout option of $14,000. So she'd pay another $14,000 if she wants to buy the truck outright, and she'd end up paying a total of $38,234. So she actually ended up paying a little more than what she would have if she'd bought. When she bought, it was 37. She ended up paying 38 to lease. So, I'm not going to sit here and tell you what the best option is for Amanda. It's something that's kind of like an individual decision based on your current situation, all that kind of stuff. There's pros and cons to each one of these situations. I'll leave it up to Amanda to figure out what the best one is for her. All right, take care. Strong inside, but you don't know it.